All right, good morning. Hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I'm going to be taping again, doing it a little bit off time, so to speak. I have told you about my physical problems right now and the fact that I'm sick, but I just want to get this finished if possible. So yesterday I went and I created the front end for the project that we're working on. So today I'd like to work on the back end. So in other words, I'd like to go over here and everything in front end I'd like to close. All right. And I don't think I've got a back end that I've created yet. So let's make that right now. So I'm going to come into here. Let's see. Let's see what we've got right here, period. So this is called Final MERN. And according to this, I've got both a back end and a front end, which is what I thought I had. And the back end should have nothing in it, but it wasn't showing that. So let me double check and make sure. I think this is the one I'm working with. That looks like everything that I had yesterday. So as far as I can tell, this is the right one. So I don't know why it's not showing, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close Visual Studio Code because, like I said, I can't see it right now. And I don't know why, but I'm going to do a file, close folder. Says, do you want to change this? See the changes? Yes. All right. And now I'm going to come back into here and I'm going to open this up and I'm going to do a open with code right here. And we'll see if we've got it now. There's back end and there's front end. So let's double check and make sure our front end is still correct. So there's app.js. And that looks like everything we had in there yesterday, as far as I can tell. And let's quickly just look at the components. It looks to me like it's correct. So again, like I said, I'd like to build the back end right now. All right. So we're going to do a couple things in here. And the first thing that I would like to do is I'd like to do my npm init. All right, so let's just come in here. This is our final MERN. So let me do a CD to backend. And again, there shouldn't be anything in here. So ls minus a, it comes back with nothing, and that's to be expected. So I'm going to do my npm init minus y. And that'll create, of course, my package.json file in here. So if I, again, do an ls minus a, there's my package.json. Okay. So let me close everything in the front end and open up the back end. I'm going to close these for now. I'm getting that error, but I am. So again, going in the back end, let's open up our package.json and make the typical changes we normally make. For instance, I want to call mine server.js. Of course, you don't have to do that. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do a start, not state, start. And this will be node server dot, oops, got to be in double quotes, of course. Node server.js. And then we'll do our dev start the way I've always been doing it all semester. And that'll be nodemon server.js. All right. And that really, I mean, I can put my name in there as the author, but it's no biggie. All right. So right now, that's pretty much everything I wanted to do in here. Now I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to close this. All right. And there's 3 dependencies that I want to go in and I want to add in here. So I'm going to add them from over here. Okay. So whoops. Let me make this bigger. There we go. Let me clear. And I'm going to do an npm I. Let's just put in nodemon minus d nodemon. All right. And that'll be our one development dependency. And then our regular production type dependencies, let's have npm I, cores, express, and mongoose. I don't think we'll need anything more than that, but we'll check later. All right, I'm going to clear again. And for now, I'm going to put this thing away. And in my package.json, I now have these three dependencies, and I have this def dependency. And that is what I wanted. Okay, so like I said, that's a start. So since it says here we're going to be using server.js, that sounds to me like it'd be a good thing to make next. So in backend here, I'm going to right mouse click and choose new file, and I'm going to make server.js. All right, and we'll do a lot of the stuff we have been doing. So const express, equals require express, const mongoose equals require mongoose, and finally const cores equal require cores. All right, so that's a start. Let's set up our port and do something a little different. Since the port we normally use is for the back end is 3000, let's make the, let me say that again. The port we use for the front end in React is 3000. Let's make the port for our back end be 3001. Don't have to. You can make it any number you want it. You know that already. So const app equal express. Now we're going to come in just a couple minutes. We're going to make a routing folder, and then we're going to make a models folder. All right. And to be able to hook up to our routes, we're going to say const to do routes equal require. Now, again, this won't work right now because we haven't created this yet. In our routes folder, we're going to have a thing called to do routes. All right. And again, we'll make that in just a few minutes. And then we need a couple app.uses in here, express.json, and another app.use of cores. Now, let me take just a couple minutes and talk about cores. You are all smart enough to realize that we are working with two different URLs, basically, and two different port numbers in here. We are working with port 3000 that we are using, excuse me, port 3000 that we are using for React. And now we just brought in for our backend port 3001. Well, technically, what's happening then is I've got a domain issue because I'm working off of two different domains. So let's npm js dot I guess it is, and I'm going to put in here cores. This is one of the things that we just added. And it says it's cores middleware. So let's look and see what that says. All right, there's the usage, and that's not that big a thing. But let's see if we can actually get some description of what it is. So I'm going to go out to the GitHub page, and here's the README, and there's a lot of stuff in here. All right. The bottom line is the reason that we're including cores is so that hopefully our front end, which is working off of port 3000, and our back end, which is working off of port 3001, can communicate with one another. All right. And like I said, that's basically what I wanted to tell you here. Okay. Got a couple more lines we want to put in here. So I'm going to see if we can connect to Mongoose. Now this, I want to mention something after I put this in. So mongoose.connect. Now I'm going to do it the way that this gentleman did it in this example here that I'm basically gleaning. And he put in here MongoDB localhost to-do list. And that should be it. Now, that may succeed, that may fail. So I'm going to put a dot then in here that basically is going to say that if it succeeds, I'm going to do a console.log that's going to say connected successfully. Okay. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to do a catch. And if there's a catch, there's going to be some kind of an error. So basically, I'm just going to tell it to console.error that error. Okay. Now, this is a little bit of a misnomer. And I'm going to tell you something that I believe you already know, but you may or may not have put this together. This will almost always succeed, and it really doesn't matter much about anything. I do not, to my knowledge, I do not currently have a database out there called to-do list. I might, but I don't think I do. But whether I do or not, this typically will succeed. All this is basically saying is, can I do this? All right, not did I do this, but can I do this? All right. Okay. So about 3 or 4 more lines. Let's come in here and do it. Add another app.use. We're going to talk about what this one means in just a bit. Again, with our to-do routes. And finally, our old app.listen. Port. And as always, we'll just do a console.log. And we will say in here with backticks, the app is up and running on port. All right, that should say port 3000, hopefully, in just a couple minutes. All right, so we came in here and we brought in the 3 things, Express, Mongoose, and Cores that we installed. Then we set up our port. Then we set up an instance of Express that we're going to use throughout this. It's called app. Then we basically are telling it to bring in what we're about to create in our routes file. Then we're telling it we want it to use, and we want it to use JSON. This will make more sense, hopefully, if we get to the point where we're able to test this, and we're able to test it on the back end using Postman. And then, because we want to be able to test both the back end and the front end, that's why we're bringing in Cores here. Here we're attempting to connect to Mongoose. If we can, we should get this message. If we cannot, we should get some kind of an error message. Then what this is going to do is this is going to basically tell us that the equivalent of our slash is going to be slash to-dos. And then finally, we're listing on that port. So let me do a file, save all. All right, let me go in and view terminal. And let me do my npm run dev start. I was going to say with, as always, with the kind of luck that I've been having, it's not going to work. But the main reason it's not going to work, let's see if we can figure out why. Okay, look where we are. We're not in the back end. So let's cd to back end and clear again. Now let's try an npm run dev start, see if that works. All right, well, it crashed, but let's see if we can figure out why. All right, so it's telling us, first of all, let me do a file save. I think I saved anyway, but all right. It's giving me all these other things, but again, here's one on mine. It doesn't like whatever is in line 9, and that's the only thing that I can see that is in my file. So we haven't built that yet. So we don't have that. It's attempting to go to a folder that doesn't exist, and that's okay. Okay. And you might say, well, what do you mean that's okay? Well, let's build that right now. And it's got to be called to do routes. So let's do this. I'm going to come up in here and in my back end, I'm going to right mouse click and put in a new folder that we're going to call routes. And under that new folder, we're going to put in a new file that is going to be called todoroutes.js. Now, I'm just wondering, even though there's nothing in there yet, all right, it still doesn't like something. All right, so we'll just put in our code and see if that fixes it. All right, so we're in here in this todoroutes.js, not a small file. It has in it about 30 lines or so. Now let's do what we always do to get us started. In fact, we're not even going to do that. We're going to just write it. So const router equals require express dot router. That's express dot router. Okay. Const to do equal require. Now, again, this is going to be something that we're going to create in just a moment. // models / to do model. And we're going to create that in a couple minutes. This, of course, has to be inside of single quotes. All right. Now, what we're going to put in here is how we're going to handle each one of these scenarios that we want to go through. In other words, get to show us all to-dos, post to allow us to put in a new to-do, put to allow us to take an existing to-do and edit it, and delete to remove an existing to-do. So we're going to plan on doing all of those 4 different routes in here right now. So this will be, the first one will be router.get with our request and our response. You hopefully remember that from earlier on in the semester. And we're going to do a to-do dot find. That is what? That is a MongoDB command. That is a MongoDB command. All right, that's telling us basically to show everything we have. When you do this, and when you do this and you do the find like this, it can either come back with an error or it can come back with a result. If it comes back with an error, of course, it failed. And if it comes back with the result, then of course, it succeeded. So if there was any kind of error, we're going to do this for all of our cases here. So you're going to see me copy this code in just a few minutes. If there's any kind of an error, we're going to throw a new error, and we're going to pass ERR to it. All right, so that'll handle the error case. And we don't need an else because since we're throwing that error, so we'll say res.json result. So that's if it succeeds. So play computer here. We're telling it that when we put in a slash, all right, that when we put in a slash, what's going to happen when we put in a slash is we want basically, I still have this up here or not, we want it to map to slash to-dos. We want that to do a get. We want that to list out all of the to-do items we currently have. In other words, give us a list of all the records. So that's what we're doing in this first route that's right here. All right, now I am going to be able to steal quite a bit of this because we want to do this every time. So let me just copy this right here. So let me copy that. So that's our first route. All right. Then next, this will be a router.post. And what will this be for? For adding a new to-do. All right, so we're going to do a to-do dot create. Just like we did before, it can have an error, it can have a result. I'm going to paste in what we had before. Okay, so we're attempting here to add a new to-do. All right, then next we want to be able to edit an existing to-do. And I don't know if I shouldn't get any errors if I do this, but let's see. Display all to-do items. Create new to-do item. All right, now we've got our last two. So this one will be to update an existing to-do item. And finally, in just a minute, we're going to say to delete an existing to-do item. All right, so let's do this one first. So we'll say router.put. This one's a little bit, I'm not going to even say harder, but there's a few things that you have to realize about what's going on in here. All right, again, if we go back to that picture I showed you, we've now handled the get and the post. And those are the easy ones, to be honest with you. Because here, with the put and then next with the delete, we have to worry about the ID. And we want to make sure we always grab the ID of what currently has been selected. All right. And eventually, as it says, we want to be able to edit when we're doing the put that item, the one with the specified ID. And then we want to show the record down below in Postman that's been updated. When we do a delete, we again need to provide, when we do the delete, we need to provide an ID. All right. And we want to make sure that the to-do that we delete is the one that has that's the ID that we've specified. And when we're done, we want to do nothing. In other words, we don't want to show anything. We could come up with a message that says record successfully deleted or something like that. All right. But we're just not going to do anything. All right. So let's see here. Look real quick. Okay. I sent a letter or an email out to somebody in administration regarding some forms that I had to fill out. So if I start hearing that I'm getting emails back, I'm hoping it's from her so she can tell me if what I have turned in is sufficient or not. So we're going to say put, and here we're going to say, oops, slash, but colon ID. We've done this kind of thing before. Again, with a request and with a response, Now, I am going to put in here that same code that we had. All right, I'm putting that same code in here, but I need to put before that, all right, the actual command. So again, when we say to do dot something, so to do dot find is calling that particular Mongo command. To do dot create is calling that Mongo command. And now it's going to be time for to do dot find one and update. All right. And on that, again, we have to let it know certain things. So I'm going to break this up over multiple lines. And I'm going to say first underscore ID req dot params dot ID. And what is that? That is the ID that was passed in. So when we go in a couple minutes, when we go in to Postman and try to test this, it'll be that ID. All right. And it's the one that's passed in as part of the URL. All right. So let's see. We do want, so we can put in a curly brace right there. That ends the curly. So I don't need a curly here. All right. So that's the first thing. Next is request.body. What is that? That's everything that's in here. Now we're going to make a really simple model and a really simple collection. It's only going to have in it a completed field, well, the actual title or whatever we call that, and then the completed. That's it. Of course, the system will put an ID on each record, an object ID. So this is request.body. All right. Then we want to make sure that once we make a change, the system takes the change that we put in. So we can add here new true. Right? And that says that basically we want the new thing to be put and shown and displayed down below and not the original. So not the one that we just modified. Finally, just like before, all right, we can have an error or we can have a result. All right. Just like before, but again, I'm going to grab this stuff now. And that should go into here. So again, if you would please play computer. All right, let's just go through each one of these three we've done so far, and then we'll do the delete and go back. This is telling us that if we just put in a slash, and if we've got in Postman, if we have chosen get as our method, we want you to show us everything that's in there. If for some reason there's an error, we put in a wrong name or a wrong something, show us that error. Otherwise, show us the result. So error is this, and result will be down here. Then we've got our post to allow us, as it says, to create a new to-do item. All right. And we want to be able to come in there and do that. And again, it's the create command that we're using. And it needs the body. All right. What is that? That's everything that we're about to enter. And if it errors, we're going to throw that as an error. And if it succeeds, we're going to just JSON or show the results. Finally, the one we just did, and I can actually move this. I put it over multiple lines so you could see what was happening here. So do this, put it like this. I mean, I want to make sure that you can read it, in other words. So we could move that way the hay over, but I'm not going to. All right. So finally, we want to be able to come in and delete an existing to-do. Alrighty. So we're going to have here router dot delete, again with a colon ID, and again with a request and a response. Right? And now we're going to be using, previously we used find one and update, but now we're going to want to do a to-do dot find one and remove. And it'll be similar, but it's not quite as much as what we had to worry about before. So what do we want in here? All right, well, we need underscore ID, and that's going to be the request dot params dot ID. And again, that's what we passed in. All right, so that's the first thing. All right, and again, just like we talked about a couple minutes ago, this can either fail where we get an error, or it can succeed where we get a result. All right, and just as we did before, so let me copy it from here. If there's an error, we're handling it. All right, if there's a result, we're handling it. I think I've got one too many of these because, boy, I copied. Now, the only other thing we have to do in here is export this. So module.exports equal router. Okay. All right. So the next thing to do then, because if we ran this now, we'd still get an error. So file, let's do a save all on here. Let's go back to here. And we now have our routes. We don't have a model though. So under our back end here, I'm going to right mouse click and make a new folder that I'm going to call models. And in that model, oops, somehow I seem to put an L on the end of it. So let me rename it. All right. And under that models folder, we'll put a new file. Let's just call it, I mean, we could call it to-do models. Let's just call it to-do.js. Okay. And it's very short. It's about 5 to 10 lines. Const mongoose equals require mongoose. Const, and then let's set up our schema. So to-do schema equals new mongoose dot schema. And like I said, this is very lightweight as far as it's being done. What I mean is, you know, with those error messages we put in before, we would have, you know, where we on the thing we just did here with these routes, rather than just throwing an error, we would have error pages so that came up so that we could tell the user what was happening. All right, in much the same way, all I'm going to put in here is the title of the to-do, and I'm going to make it a string, and whether or not it's completed. And we'll make that a Boolean. And that's it. All right, finally, if you remember from when we went over this in the Mongo part of the class, module.exports equal mongoose.model to do schema. And to do schema. So that should be correct. So file, save all. All right. Now, I have absolutely no idea if this is going to work or not. And if for some reason, when we go through all this stuff, if it keeps crashing, I'm going to go out and I'm going to create another repo that's going to be called not mine. And this will be the author's of this class that I took. It'll be his entire project. So you've got something that you can look at. I will tell you, I'm not very comfortable doing that. I don't think it's the right thing to do exactly. All right. So what I'll do is I'll put it out there for pretty much the rest of the week. And then come Saturday or so, I'll remove that repo. I should really go out. I probably have well over 100 repos out there right now, and a lot of them are just garbage. So I should really clean that up anyway. So let's come in here. And let's do an npm run dev start. And of course, it's breaking. It's coming back and it's telling me that something is not being found right now. So let's see if we can figure out what that is. It says cannot find models, to do model. Oh, I just called it to do and not to do model. Okay, that's fine. So let's go back to server.js, and where I added this, that should just be to do like that. So let me save. And let's see if it's going to allow me to run it now. Again, no idea if it will or not. Well, you'll see now the app is up and running successfully. Well, that's good. Now it also says connected successfully, which means I have connected to Mongo. All right. Now I'm going to try something, and this is something this author did not do. All right. I went out yesterday, and because he's connecting basically to the local, he's connecting basically to the local instance of MongoDB. All right. The one that we ran from the command line. I want to see if I can make a change so we can actually connect. And when we connect, if we can do a connection to where we actually want to go out in Mongo on Atlas. All right. Okay. Let's see. Been going for like 40 minutes, and it seems like I've been going for about 5 hours. Okay. So with that up, now if I go out and, well, first of all, let's come in here and look at this. I'm just trying to verify that what I did in here, I did correctly. And I believe I did. All right. So this line here is attempting to connect to a local instance of MongoDB. In other words, it's assuming that if you remember when we started to learn Mongo and we ran it from the command line and we were doing that stuff right from the command line, it is expecting that that's what we're doing. I'd like to change that. I have no idea if this is going to work or not, but I did key this in the other day, and that was this. Connect to MongoDB Atlas using Node.js. All right, see if we can find that. Looks like it's got to be one of these two that I used. All right, so let's look and see if it was this one. Because as soon as I see it, I'll know. I believe it was the other one. So let's look at the other one. So that was it right here. Okay, we're going to modify this, but I want to go over every line that's in here right now. All right, they're suggesting that we put this into a new file, which we could do. I'm not going to do that. All right, but we've already got our const mongoose equal mongoose. The next line that's underneath that, that's going to have to change. If anybody is watching this and you decide you want to try this, of course, where it's got sample user, you've got to change that, put in your username. Where it has password, you have to change that, and you have to put in your password. All right, and then finally over here, you have to put in the name of your database. Okay, so we're doing the same type of thing. We're doing the same type of thing, but we're attempting to connect to MongoDB Atlas instead of MongoDB from the command line. Now, this stuff that's in here, we shouldn't need. I think it was in like version 3.3 of MongoDB. They added a bunch of new features and functionality. And for a while, you had to put this stuff in there. Now, I believe if you put it in, I don't even think you'll get an error, but I think you get a warning that it's no longer required. All right. And here's where we are attempting to connect, very similar to what I have in there right now, where it's saying either you connected to the database or you didn't connect to the database. So what I'd like to try to do here is to take this code that you see right here. All right, just all of this code. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. All right. And I don't know if this is going to work well or not, but we're going to try it anyway. In Notepad here, I'm going to put it in right there. All righty. And what I'm telling you is, again, we shouldn't need any of this right there. Okay, so I'm going to leave this right here. I'm going to move this down, and then I'm going to try to bring up, let's put it up all the way here so I can click here and bring up our editor and our file. Okay, so now I want you to be able to see what we're doing that's going to be different. We've got const mongoose equal require mongoose. All right, and that's right there. Okay, let's move this down. And then here, we've just got mongoose.connect. Well, here we're doing it basically the same way down here, but I'm going to do this const URL, but I'm going to replace it with my information. All right. Okay. Now I've got my information actually up here someplace in one of these tabs that I've got in here. There it is. That's not the one. That's the one I want. All right. So what I am going to do is I'm going to see if I can do this behind the scenes, because I don't care so much about you guys seeing my username and password, but either I'm going to have to change that. All right. Or if anybody else ever uses this, they'd be able to use my username and password. So what I'm going to do for just a couple minutes here is I'm going to come in and basically come into here, and I'm going to stop sharing so I can put that stuff in. All right. I already showed you what I'm going to be doing, so that shouldn't be a real big thing to anybody in here. So I've got all that in there, and I believe at least it has, okay, it has my username, it has my password, and I use the auto generate password. So it's like 17 characters long, and I'm going to make the name of my database to-do list. I am now taking that, and in here, let's see, let me go back to here. All right, I now have it in there. Now I've got my mongoose.connect, etc., etc. So I've got all that stuff in there. So I have replaced attempting to connect. Let me go back and bring this back up here. All right, so let me do a file save all first. Now let me go back and reconnect. So what I did was in here, you can't see the line, it's right up there. I did the same thing that I just showed you. I set up a URL, and now I'm trying to connect this way. Now, it's either going to say connected to, we'll put in here, to-do list database, or it's going to say error connecting to the to-do list database. All right, so I took this right from that document that I'd shown you. All right, so go look in here. Let me stop the run and start the run again. When you know it. All right, it says connection params is not, I know what that is, so we'll fix that right now. We don't need that. That was those three things that I just showed you before with the unified topology and the other stuff that's in there. We don't use those anymore. I don't believe we need them. So let's see if this fixed it. All right, connected to-do list database. That's the good news. All right, the bad news, as far as I know, is we actually don't have a to-do list database. Okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do right now, and it's been a while, so you'll have to bear with me, is I'm going to go out first to, I'm going to go out to mongodb.com, and I'm going to attempt to log in. It's been a while. So sign in. It's going to ask me for my password, which I don't remember, so this should be fun. Select all images with motorcycles, motorcycle, motorcycle, motorcycle. I'll verify my identity, so they're going to send something to my phone. It is 757075. It says that I'm in. Well, that's all fine and dandy. All right. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to go to connect. I don't need that anymore. I don't need to go to connect. That was where I would have said connect your application. That's where I got this thing from that I modified before. So let's see, where do we want to go to? Browse collections. And I don't know what I have in here. So I've got a to-do list. I did not know I did. It has in there to-dos, and it looks like there's no data in there, as far as I can tell. All right, so I'm going to attempt to insert a document, and there's the ID, and I'm going to put in here a title. And that title is going to be test to do number 1. And it looks like it already put in the closing one of these, so I don't need that. All right. And then I also want to add one thing into here. Doing this, I always forget how to do it. So add a field after the title. There we go. And that'll be completed, which I'm going to set. I want to change it to a Boolean. And completed should be set to false. All right, so that's what I now have in there. Test to do number 1 and false. Click insert. And there it is. Okay, so I have now in my to-do list database, in my to-dos collection, or the equivalent of a table, I have added a record. May not seem like a big thing, but it's a start. All right, so next I'm going to jump in down here and I'm going to go into Postman. And I'm hoping at least this is going to allow me to test and see if my stuff that I've got in here is working. All right, so this will go to localhost : 3001/to-dos. And I'm going to do a get just like we have right here. Now, if this doesn't work, I'll have to take a little break and see if I can figure out why. So click send. And there's that to do, test to do number 1. That's a good start. All right. So let's see if we can go in and add another to do. So I'm going to change it up here from get to post, which means, of course, I have to go to body here and then go to raw and choose JSON. And then up here inside of my curly braces, I will add a new title, which will be test to do number 2. All right, then a comma on the end. And again, we'll have a completed status of false. Completed of false. All right, now, when we ran the first one, this res.json that we put in there, that's what showed it down here. So right now, when you look, this is test to do number 1. If this works, this should now say test to do number 2. So let's see if it does. All right, there's test to do number 2, and it has a different object ID. All right, I'm going to put in one more, and I'm just going to put in test to do number 3, and I'm going to send that. Now, when I go back to get, and I don't need any of this stuff here, so I can choose none here. And when I run this, it should show me all 3 of them down here. And there they are. All right, let's go to the last one that we put in, the one with this ID. And we want to see now if we are able to go in and modify that one. All right, So I'll bring this up again just like this, but I'll put a slash after that and then put in the object ID. And again, since we're changing stuff, we'll have to go to raw and JSON. This is test I to do number 3, and we'll change it from false to true. It's a Boolean, so it can only have one of those values. Test to do number 3, and we'll put the word modified afterwards. All right, and then I'll click send, and what does it say? It's giving us a problem. It says cannot get that to do. Now, that could mean a few things. Well, first of all, I tell you what it means. I didn't change that to put. So how's that? So let's see if that changed it. Now, it may have bumped us from the server here. All right, so let's see if it did. Oh, it still says I'm connected, so let's see. All right. So there we go. Test to do number 3 modified, and the completed is now true. Okay, I do want to mention, if you ever look down here and you see this V with a 0, one of the things I mentioned in class was using that timestamp. And if you do set the timestamp up in there, it'll have the date and time this was created or last modified. I'm not going to do that one. Finally, since we've got this one up here already, I'm going to change this back to none. I'm going to go back over to delete, and I'm going to see if we can delete the one we just put in. So this should show nothing down here because the res.json was left empty. Or basically, we're telling it not to display anything. So, well, it did show it. So that means I've got to go back and look at that. But let's see if it's been removed. All right, so we'll go back to get. All right, I will remove the object ID. And we're going to see now if we only get 2 back. Send, and we only get the 2. So I goofed up. Let's fix that right now so we can go on. So I want to go look quickly. That way down. All right, this I believe, is that going to be in our routes? Yeah. When we did our last route there, the route in our to-do routes for our delete, we didn't want to do a res.json result. We just would do a res.end here, res.end. All right, so let me do a file save all, and let's go back into Postman and test and make sure that what we just did worked. All right, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to add a new to-do. We just did the get, so you can see the 2 are in here. So I'm going to change this to post. I will set it to raw, and it's already set to JSON. So I'm going to just make it like we had it before. Test number, to do test number 3, and I'm going to click send, and there it is. And again, if we go back again to get, all right, and we run it, we now have 3, and there's our last one. But I want to delete this one now. So I'm going to go to none. In fact, before I do that, let me grab the object ID here. Copy that to the clipboard. All right, I'm going to go to none here, and I'm going to put in here a slash followed by that object ID, and I'm going to click send. And what is came back? It says cannot get this one. Again, that could be a bunch of different things. That basically it's because I should have set that to delete, and I didn't. So now let's see if nothing shows down here. And that's the way it should be. Now, if we go back to get, and I'm going to remove this object ID here, and I'm going to make that it already is none. So I'm going to say get, and it should only show me the to do test 1 and to do test 2. And there they are. All right. So we're making some progress. All right. But what we need to be able to do in here, excuse me, what we need to be able to do. So we come in and we started to build our back end. We connected to our database. We used a model. You shown we were able to fetch data from the database. I talked a little bit about those older warning messages. We created the routes for inserting and deleting and updating. And we also did our best to make sure that we were following RESTful conventions right here. All right. So we're not done, but we basically have done, I've got this lecture basically split into two. All right. And we're done with what we had worked with thus far. All right. Okay. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this and put this into two lectures because right now I'm holding off coughing and doing a few other things. Leave it at that. So I'm going to. I'm going to. I don't think there's any way to pause in here. So I'm going to create this. This will be the one that'll be out on Teams, but I'm going to create the next one that I do. I'm going to create it in Camtasia, and I'm going to put both of them out on my YouTube channel. All right, so I'll be back in just a couple minutes.